Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our July 22nd, 2026 work session, where we're going to tackle our capital improvement projects list for facilities, roads, and bridges. And so we have some great guests with us. And Brooke, will you be starting us? Great, thank you.
Yes, commissioners, good afternoon. Bear with me a quick moment while I share my screen.
While you get that set up, I'll make the announcement that we do not take public comment during work sessions, but we will have our 5:30 business meeting if anyone would like to stay and give general public comment at that time to make sure that we hear from you if you have any feedback on these issues.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. Staff is excited to come before you tonight, present the 2027 through 2031 Capital Improvement Plan. Several major projects are underway currently from a facilities perspective as part of the county's long-term facility strategy. The courthouse revision and expansion project continues to progress, as we can all see, and the public safety building is nearing completion at this time. That facility now houses our 911 center, emergency management, and most recently, the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. The historic courthouse stonework restoration, this is the below grade waterproofing, and then the above grade masonry restoration project is also nearing completion. In addition, last year, staff completed the Public Works HVAC replacement project, which was quite a feat there last fall. And then the Treasurer's 6th Street satellite office remodel was completed as well. In addition to those major renovation projects, 2 parking lots got replaced. One of them was at the Human Services building. I've parked there recently. It looks really nice. And then our juvenile detention center got their parking lot replaced as well. The Human Services, I just want to be very clear that this is not an exhaustive list of all of the capital projects that were completed in 2025 and most recently into early 2026. But I really wanted to hit the highlights of the ones that have been completed recently. Last year, commissioners, you guys determined that the county would not move forward with improvements to the property at 1242 Mass, just to the south of us here. And as a result, staff had to reallocate that funding we were able to reallocate that funding to support a series of new projects that will be planned for 2028, 2029, and 2030. So these projects are going to include the JLEC window replacement that hopefully will be scoped in and included in with the phasing in of the final piece of that renovation over there. But staff is earmarking some funds initially to make sure that we can make those improvements to that structure. There's a historic courthouse window improvement project that is in coordination with our sustainability department, who's working with Branch Pattern on our energy audit to increase sustainability here in this building here. There's a rather large radio infrastructure replacement project for our 911 infrastructure that replaces radios at all 5 towers, all 5 sites. And then there's an LDCFM station alerting project that is new this year. When LDCFM gave us their proposed budget, it did include that new project for 2028, which will improve that system. In addition, there is a new project for the Criminal Justice Services, Youth Services campus there at 330 Northeast Industrial Lane, which is also the Juvenile Detention Center. Their roof is in need of some repairs. It's a rather old roof, and they also need some flooring replaced throughout that facility that's aging as well. So alongside these new initiatives that you haven't seen before, there's a number of new projects that are scheduled to begin in 2027. We're going to begin replacing the deteriorating, Jay calls it the EIFS, the exterior insulation finishing system at the correctional facility. And then the county will contribute its share towards the LDCFM Station 6 expansion. That work is underway right now. They are working with a consultant on the design and construction documents for that building. So we'll have some initial startup costs to satisfy our portion of the agreement for that here in 2026. And then in 2027, we're going to start making payments on the actual improvement and the construction of that facility as they determine their construction manager at risk. In 2028, both the historic courthouse and the county courthouse across the way there will undergo those major window improvements, one of which, or both of which we just talked about. At the same time, we're going to start work on the historic courthouse basement, including a full remodel of the existing space and upgrades to that electrical system. LDCFM will be completing their station alerting project in 2028. And we'll get started on that roof repair and flooring replacement at JDC. In 2029, we're going to come back to this historic courthouse and we're going to complete improvements to common spaces in areas throughout the building, and then complete some additional remodel to the spaces here. So just kind of as a very high level overview of some facilities projects that are on the horizon. The CIP, again, it covers 2027 through 2031. The total investment in facilities projects during that span is $42.7 million. And the total investment in road and bridge projects is $41.8 million over 5 years. Now, I would be no finance manager if I didn't put this on a graph for you guys so that you guys could see the estimated project expenditures for the next 5 years. As we wind down this project across the way to the east of us, we're going to have a pretty big spend down of a little over $35 million in 2026. 2027 is that green bar, that's the highest bar there. We've got some pretty significant expenditures for both road and bridge and facilities project planned for next year as those projects come to completion. And then commissioners, I wanted to let you know that, I know we talked about this a little bit last year, but just as a reminder, the county, the way that we run our CIP is that a portion of the CIP is for road and bridge projects, and then the portion of the fund balance in the CIP is for facilities project. At the beginning of the year, the county started off with $85.7 million in our CIP fund. And of that $85.7 million, $65.97 million was for facilities projects. That revenue, that fund balance, the CIP reserve balance is really what I like to call it, includes the bond sale proceeds. It also includes rental income and interest alongside that transfer from the general fund to support these projects for the next 5 years. The public works balance was around 20 million, 19.74 million. And their revenue is a mix of not only the transfer from the general fund, which we take a percentage of, but they also get federal fund exchange revenue and partner funds, and we also have been sharing that interest income with them as well to support those road and bridge projects. So just kind of going over how the CIP is funded, staff allocates every dollar of those balances that I just talked about to projects. So if that transfer weren't made from the general fund, we would have to cut funding from one of these projects or rearrange, which I've gotten good at rearranging projects and changing the years. And as budgets change and as needs of the county change, we can shift and we can pivot, but but every dollar is allocated to a project or a program inside the CIP. So they are restricted in use for the purposes that you have before you today for that CIP. So commissioners, that's really all I had for you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I'll provide these slides to Robin as a follow-up today so we can get them uploaded to the agenda item. But I'd love to turn it over to you guys for any questions that you have about facilities projects before we move to Road and Bridge.
And commissioners, do you have questions for Brooke about facilities projects before we hear from Chad? I had just a couple. And the station alerting for LDCFM, is that all stations or is that specific to Station 6? Was it a program overall?
That's a good question, Commissioner. I have Mackenzie Azell here with LDCFM, and she would be happy to help answer that question for us today.
Thank you,
Mackenzie, for-
Mackenzie.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so our station alerting project, it came before you all a few years ago. It then went unfunded to help pay for some of our EV infrastructure. It's now back in the proposal for 2028. It will include Station 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 within the city. Also Station 6, Station 11, and Station 12. So Eudora and Baldwin.
And what is it? What is it? How is it a different program than how we do station alerting now?
So the station alerting that we have now in all of our stations was actually last updated in 2013, 2014. We have a health and safety committee that has really dug into the current system and then also what other systems are out there and have made multiple recommendations for the department to upgrade our system. So right now, the station alerting system in general is when dispatch dispatches LDCFM units. They say the tones drop. So on the alert, you hear that Medic 5 needs to go on a call. It wakes, if it's in the middle of the night, it'll wake everybody in Station 5 up to say Medic 5 needs to go. And so then those folks that are on Medic 5 then will go and respond, but everybody else has to then fall back asleep. And some new elements to some of the station alerting products that are out there right now that a lot of our neighboring jurisdictions are using are actually specific to each room. And so like one feature may be that if I'm on Medic 5 and I'm in this one bunk room, I'm clocking in on that. And when Medic 5 gets dispatched, my lights come on, I'm warned, but someone maybe the battalion chief who doesn't need to go is not woken up at that time. So it does align with the health and safety committee's commitments and recommendations. And then in that packet, I believe when we submitted the CIP project, it noted some other things that the station alerting has as far as benefits go.
Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
can see the benefits to that.
Perfect.
Other commissioners, I have one more question, but I'll give Laura a chance. This was on ECC. Tony, if you want to answer it perhaps. And it's the radios for ECC. Those are all for our towers around the county. Does it have anything to do with the new PSB or that switch or anything? This was planned in spite of that.
Yes, thank you for having me to talk about this project. In 2013, we deployed the Douglas County Simulcast system, P25 system. That system is aged out, and then by 2030, it'll be end of life. And those repeaters that are in each tower will be not serviceable by Motorola after that point in time. So this is a general replacement and upgrade of those aging infrastructure, and has really nothing to do with the PSB project at whole.
Thank you. No other questions on facilities? I think we can move to Road and Bridge.
Hello, commissioners. Thanks for the time today. This CIP is really not a lot of new information. The projects are similar list to what you've seen before. The work we did this year was a couple months ago, we shared with you the bridge inspection report for 2026. That's a every 2-year process. We took that report this year and kind of reviewed our priorities for bridge replacements. There's a new methodology with the bridge inspections nationwide, so there was some new information to consider, and it It maybe wasn't the whole reason that we shuffled things around. Bridges tend to age at different rates, and so 2 years does make a difference in your priorities. But so we did a full review of those and reprioritized everything, and we've got a good bridge replacement list as usual. One bridge this year, 3 bridges next year, 3 the year after that, and then we kind of back off for some road projects. We got to keep in mind our inspection workload and try to fit that in as well as cash flow. So bridges were kind of the focus. We also went through and updated all of our cost estimates. So like for Wakarusa Drive, we were prior to this had like a 3 or 4-year-old estimate. So now we have a good estimate, and added the engineering expense that we just approved recently for the engineering environmental study. So overall, just some, cleaning it up and making sure the numbers are all looking good and balanced. And the project list, though, is pretty much what you've seen before. So happy to talk about any of the projects in particular.
Thanks. Commissioners, what questions do you have?
What did you learn from the re-estimates when you did that? You said you had some older bids. Have prices really jumped? What have you learned?
Yeah, so asphalt is driven by the price of oil. And so we've got to put more in there for asphalt if we're doing any projects soon. So anything in the next year or two, we bumped up pavement costs. We also just in general with labor, it's going up. So we're using our bid tabs from recent projects to look at estimating, and everything is creeping up a little bit. Also doing a little better job on as a project is like 5 or 10 years out, it's maybe less of a defined scope. If it gets within 2 or 3 years, we want to look at more of, okay, what are we really doing here, and get a good estimate based on a more refined scope. And so we did some of that work too.
As you're reevaluating and reestimating, how does that impact some of the current projects that you have and those relationships? I'm going to say, for example, with either other cities like the city of Lawrence or maybe Baldwin, Eudora, and or with KDOT, because they've also already done their estimates. And so if any of those estimates change and you have contracts or fiscal agreements with them, and you know that your prices have gone up, or you have changes just in general, and you need to recoup costs, how do those conversations go? And are you able to recoup any of the costs from stakeholders that you are accommodating for projects that are in our county?
Yeah, we really don't have any situations where, we are in the same pot of money with another agency mid-project. If we get a KDOT grant, that's a year or two in advance of when we spend the money. We know that it's there, the agreements are in place, and the dollars don't change. The cost estimates may change, and we basically cover that with CIP funds, but grants are obviously a good thing, so we're happy to do that. So we don't have a lot of situations where we're having to, decide how we're going to tackle fiscal issues. That's the nice thing about the cash funded CIP is, especially for current year and next year, we know exactly what we're doing, and we know the money's there, and we can get pretty good estimates, if not bids, to say, here's our balance and here's where we stand. And then we just focus on getting it built. You talk about 3 or 4 years out, like the Wakarusa Drive project, all this time we've been talking about it, and that money's sitting there, but there are a lot of unknowns. And there were partners that we've been involved with, both the state and the city, that we've had different agreements and back and forth, but it's not something we have to work out current year. So we're pretty lucky that way.
Okay, so then in those situations, are you able to recoup any expenses? Like, for example, if you do have a road that needs to go in and you were not overly anticipating that road needs to go in, and it's not the county's responsibility to put a particular road in, will KDOT come in and put that road in if it's their responsibility to put the road in? So I'm just like making up a scenario.
That's, you're talking about transportation system planning.
Hmm.
That's really outside the scope of the CIP. If a transportation plan were to say that a road is needed, it will show up in the CIP as a
Okay.
result. But there's a multi-year lapse there. So, the traffic way obviously has been talked about for decades, and they're building it now. They're going to build another phase after this. But, we don't need to get into that discussion on an annual basis to keep things moving. Those are big issues that drive what you later see in a CIP.
Okay, all right. So when I look at the overall budget, and I see that as the years progress, when we get to 2030, I see that we have less money in the budget. So is that because some of the grant funds are being spent down, or the budget itself is being spent down? So I'm just kind of curious as to why we don't have a whole lot.
Sure. So it's actually the flip side of that. We have too much right now.
Okay.
We should not be carrying the kind of balance that we are, but the Waukerusa Drive project has delayed year after year after year, and those funds have built up and they're sitting there. The intent was to build that a year or two ago. We're going to build it a year or two from now. We're carrying a balance on a very large project within the balance for all of our other projects. So as soon as that clears out, we'll be carrying a smaller balance. The same is true with the work we plan on Route 1061 in 2029. It's a lot of money in 1 year. We've been building up to that. Once that clears, then we'll be back down to a balance that is more appropriate, really.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand if we're still going to have, when we think about road and bridge, we think about all of our different areas across the county, that we're still going to have enough money in the budget to manage all the other projects that are going to be coming your way in the parking lot, that I do know that you have, and all the requests that we do have coming in from constituents that we currently cannot fill.
Yeah, and a good way to look at it is to you look at the expenditures, the actual expenditures for prior years versus the actual CIP allocations, and we're tracking pretty close. So the balance is one thing, but if we pull in $4 million a year roughly, we spend around $4 million a year. That's going to continue. And the fact that we have extra money in the balance right now is kind of another issue.
Okay.
Yeah, looking at the bids that came in last year, it looks like on your smaller projects, you were pretty much spot on with your estimates. With the multi-million-dollar projects, the estimates seem to be a lot higher than the actual bid. Do you think that's the program you use, or what causes that?
We've seen it go both ways. Go back 5 years and you could have said the opposite about those issues. Estimating is not easy. And if there's a current trend that shows high asphalt prices, high labor prices, we see a bid. If the next project is a project that's 10 times as big, what decision would you make about what to assume there? And so there are some contingencies built in. I've said before, we don't want to be the low bidder. The engineer's estimate's meant to be a guide of what an appropriate amount would be to spend. And if somebody's much lower than that, then that's great. If somebody's much higher than that, then we usually say we're not doing that project right now for whatever reason. And we have done that.
Thanks.
Yeah, we have a couple of bridges that are to service one or two residences. And I assume kind of just our obligation is the same, whether that's a large neighborhood or a small neighborhood for the safety factor of bridges. Is that be right?
That's true. Yeah. Once the county has approved building permits on a road, we're obligated to serve them. And if it happens to cross a large enough stream that a bridge is required, then we're obligated to maintain a bridge and often replace a bridge.
And some of these are low water crossings, which is kind of an older way of doing things. Are we getting away from those, or what's the threshold when you no longer can use a low water crossing?
Yeah, we've got a couple of those in recent memory, and low water crossing is technically going to be a bridge. It's easy to know right away that we're talking about a bridge-sized structure if it was built as a low water crossing. And so low water crossings shouldn't have served residential properties, but with previous codes and previous policies, that happened. So we're just trying to make sure that people are able to be served. We're really worried about not just the residents, but all the people who have to serve them, the ambulance, the fire, UPS, postal, all those people have to get through there.
Don't want to forget about Commissioner Reed joining us online. She's had some unstable internet.
Yeah, she sent me a text that she got kicked off of the Wi-Fi outage at her hotel. So I'll keep an eye on if she joins back in.
Wants to text you any questions, we will try and get those
Okay, she
entertained.
can't really hear right now. I
All right,
probably
well,
either. So yeah.
She's missing out.
Oh, it looks like, yeah, maybe she's having some Wi-Fi issues.
So Chad, there's some projects around Lone Star Lake, and it's either one or both bridges along the southern arms there. And one of those is a historic bridge that was intended to be left maybe as a park. Can you just talk more about those projects and anything that might be tied to them?
Yeah, so we have two bridges in both the south arms of the Lone Star Lake that are both coming up for replacement in terms of our priorities. The historic bridge is load posted. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. So we want to leave that in place and build a bypass bridge and road. So that project, I think we bumped it a year or two behind the other one. And the other one is higher priority because of some scour issues and some wing wall failure issues. And so that'll be the one we tackle first. In both cases, because they're right on the lake, there's an opportunity to look at some lake projects at the same time with a contractor on site, potentially lower the water level and do some things in terms of grading, sediment removal, different ideas. We will have our dam safety inspection this year, and I'm anticipating that we'll do a follow-up project that's not listed yet to replace the valve in the spillway tower. It's very old, it's rusty, and it needs to be replaced. And so lowering the water level would be served by that also. So some multiple things that could go on if we lowered the water level at some point, and it'll just be a matter of determining whether a contractor working on a bridge is involved with that or not.
Talking about bridges, there were a number that were kind of generally the 1970s era that were not holding up well. It seems like we're getting through most of those in terms of the replacements. Will this kind of slow down at some point and kind of feel a little bit more caught up and just managing things on a ongoing basis, or am I reading that wrong?
We have 161 bridges, and they have an average life overall of around 70 to 80 years. So the philosophy is if you replace 2 every year, you'll never have a year where you have to replace 20 in 1 year. The problem with that, of course, is that in the 1970s, they built 50 bridges, and there was a big load all of a sudden. And at the same time, and maybe because they built so many, there were some issues with design and quality. We're seeing a lot of deterioration of those bridges. So we've been consistently putting 1970s bridges in the priority list just to try to keep ticking away at them, focusing on arterial roads, emergency routes, load posted bridges, and that goes into our priority making. And we will probably still be replacing 1970s bridges in 30 years. So it's an ongoing issue.
Thanks. Commissioners, other questions or thoughts?
I had a question about the Wakarusa Drive extension. If for some reason the environmental report comes back and that project is not doable, I understand we owe the state $9 million or some odd number like that. Is that 2024 dollars, or is that that doesn't raise with inflation, does it? It's a fixed number.
It is a fixed number that we would owe them. It was a contribution to their bid, so their bid is done, and they looked at it as a percentage.
And it may be 3 years or so before we know. Well, I guess the environmental will be done before that, right?
Yeah, we're trying to be aggressive. We want to see that environmental assessment done by the end of this year and immediately hire a consultant if possible, and then be aggressive with design and construction. So, 2028, I'd like to see it underway.
Thanks.
So Chad, looks like there's a fair number of KDOT grants and such that are worked into our CIP in terms of partner funds. Seems like we've been pretty successful with pulling those down. Can you just talk about the grant opportunities?
Yeah, we have been very lucky with some applications to KDOT. We got 1.4 million for a bridge on the Farmers Turnpike that we'll build next year. We got a couple $100,000 for high friction surface treatment project next year. We got another $500,000 for guardrail a couple of years after that, or a year after that. Those projects are part of the high risk rural road program, so it's federal pass-through funds. And, you know, we have had good luck. One of the reasons why we are competitive with KDOT grants is that we're able to deliver the projects because we have in-house engineering. We've actually gotten requests to bump our projects sooner because other counties have dropped off on their ability to complete the projects. And so KDOT's looking to get that money spent. And so that I think that, you know, fares well for us that we have the personnel and the capacity to do that work and get those funds.
Do you have other questions? We haven't asked Jimmy anything, so. If we don't have any other questions, we can, oh, go ahead.
Well, I got one other one on, I know last year it hadn't made the list, but is there any update on the Church Street Exchange in Eudora? If KDOT's going to do anything with that?
Are you talking about the RAISE grant or the Star Bond project, or
Well,
is it something we're doing?
that exit is dangerous.
Okay. I mean, I think they're still waiting for clarification on where they stand with that grant. And what is it, $22 million or something?
Yeah, I don't think they've gotten confirmation that they've received the grant.
One thing I would add there is that we are planning in 2029 to put shoulders on the road up to 1200 road and 1200. And it would be odd to transition from a shouldered road to a future city street that's still 2 lanes rural to an improved roundabout. So we'll coordinate for sure if that happens. We'll coordinate that roundabout work with our projects so that, you know, makes the most of those dollars.
Chad, this isn't so much about your CIP, but since you're here and we have a little bit of time, we heard from Clarion last week about infrastructure. And I'm interested in how you see some of their recommendations impacting our CIP and our road and bridge fund.
Yeah, so we put a lot of work into that report with Clarion and had a lot of really good meetings, conversations about, you know, future development planning and policy. And the CIP is a response to the issues as opposed to the, you know, the work we want to do on the code would be proactively trying to guide those issues. So ideally, you would reduce CIP work in the future if you plan your development well, put more costs on developers if development happens, or steer development away from areas where massive infrastructure is needed. So I don't think the CIP is necessarily impacted by what we're seeing right now, but we could improve future CIP needs in that work.
One of the things that they flagged was we have so many different providers for rural utilities that all, you know, track things differently. As you do your projects, you know, the road and bridge projects and impacting ditches and such, what are you finding in terms of our ability to know where our utilities are located predictably in Douglas County?
We have, you know, we use one call on survey work, and then again when we go to actually dig. So we're checking multiple times when we call DigSafe. We are finding the water lines accurately. Sometimes we'll pothole those if we want to know the depths, which means you expose them physically. The thing that surprises us and catches us is fiber optic lines for internet service. They are all over the place and they're not well documented, and the locators even don't have good records. And we just had the bridge project we're doing this year was shut down for a month, waiting for a last minute emergency relocation to get that fiber line out of the way because it wasn't identified correctly.
Update. Commissioners, other questions about any part of our CIP? We have a little bit of time and this is one of my favorite topics. So, but seeing none, I think we can recess until our 5:30 business meeting. And if anyone has feedback for us, they can come during general public comment and talk to us about that. So thank you all for being here and for the work that you provide. And it's something that we need our community to understand, that these projects are identified, paid for to the dollar ahead of time so that we can have that kind of flexibility to move from one project to another if something happens. And it's a very responsible use of money and keeps us from having to take out debt on any of the projects in this book. So thank you all for being here.